The transport ship rumbled as it dropped out of hyperspace. Lieutenant Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small window and saw Korath Prime for the first time. The planet looked like a giant gray rock covered in metal buildings that reached toward the purple sky. 3 moons hung in the distance, casting strange shadows across the surface. Jake pulled his uniform straight and checked his gear one more time. His hands were steady, but his heart beat fast. He was about to become the first human to attend the Zentari Military Academy. The academy trained the best soldiers from 12 different alien species. Earth's leaders had worked for 3 years to get him this chance. The ship landed with a loud thud. Jake grabbed his bag and walked toward the exit. The air outside smelled like metal and something he could not name. Gravity felt heavier here than on Earth. Each step took more effort than usual. A group of alien soldiers waited at the landing pad. The one in front had 4 arms and skin that looked like gray stone. His uniform had more gold stripes than the others. Jake walked up to him and stood at attention. "Lieutenant Morrison reporting for duty, sir," Jake said. The alien looked down at him with yellow eyes. "I am Commander Vexitar. You are smaller than I expected." Jake stayed quiet. He had learned that first impressions mattered. The commander was at least 8 feet tall and twice as wide as Jake. His skin looked thick enough to stop bullets. "Follow me," Vexitar said. "The other instructors want to see you." They walked through the academy grounds. Jake saw training areas filled with alien soldiers practicing combat moves. Some had claws that could cut through metal. Others had armor that grew from their skin. A few had extra arms or legs that gave them advantages in battle. Jake felt small and weak compared to them. Humans had no natural weapons, no armor, and no special abilities. He wondered if Earth's leaders had made a mistake sending him here. They entered a large building made of black stone. The walls were covered with weapons from different planets. Jake recognized some energy rifles and plasma cannons, but most of the equipment was strange to him. "This is the main instruction hall," Vexitar explained. "You will spend most of your time here learning galactic warfare tactics." They walked into a room where 6 alien instructors sat around a metal table. Jake had studied their species before, coming here, but seeing them in person was different. Each one looked like they could kill him with their bare hands. Instructor Thylan stood up first. She belonged to the arachnoid species and had 6 arms that moved like spider legs. Her black eyes looked at Jake like he was something she might eat. "So this is the human," she said. Her voice sounded like grinding metal. "I still do not understand why we accepted his species into our program. The Galactic Defense Coalition wanted to test human potential," Vexitar replied. "We agreed to evaluate one of their soldiers." Thylan walked around Jake in a circle. "Look at him. No claws, no armor, no poison glands. His skin is thin enough to cut with a fingernail. What? Can such a weak creature possibly teach us about warfare?" Jake kept his mouth shut. He had dealt with bullies before. The best response was to stay calm and prove himself through actions, not words. Another instructor spoke up. This one was Sorek, a reptile species with green scales and a tail that could break bones. "I have read reports about human conflicts. They fight with primitive weapons and simple tactics. Nothing we have not seen before. Their technology is also behind ours," added a third instructor. "They barely have space travel. We have been crossing galaxies for thousands of years." Jake listened to them discuss humans like they were not there. He learned that the aliens viewed Earth as a backward planet full of primitive beings. They thought humans were weak, stupid, and useless in real combat. "We will test him like any other student," Vexitar decided. "If he fails, we send him home. If he succeeds, we learn something new about his species." The instructors showed Jake to his room. It was small and plain, with a bed, desk, and storage space for his gear. The walls were thick metal, and the single window looked out at the training grounds. Jake unpacked his things and thought about what he had gotten himself into. The aliens were right about one thing. Humans were physically weaker than most species in the galaxy. They had no natural weapons or armor. Their technology was primitive compared to what he had seen here. But the aliens had missed something important. Humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had fought in every environment on Earth, against every kind of enemy. They had learned to win battles even when they were outnumbered and outgunned. Jake opened his notebook and began writing observations about each alien species he had met. He noted their physical advantages, their attitudes, and their weaknesses. This was something humans did well. They studied their enemies and found ways to beat them. A loud bell rang outside his window. Jake looked out and saw students gathering in the training yard. They were practicing with energy weapons and fighting in groups. Most of them were at least twice his size. Tomorrow, Jake would join them. He would start learning galactic warfare, tactics, and prove that humans belonged in the academy. The instructors expected him to fail quickly. They thought he was just another weak alien who could not handle real combat training. Jake smiled as he watched the alien students practice. They were about to learn that humans were more dangerous than they looked. Earth had sent him here for a reason. He was not just a soldier, he was a teacher, and he had a lot to teach them about warfare. The first lesson would be that size and strength did not always win battles. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy was the one who looked harmless. Jake woke up before dawn. The academy's morning alarm would ring in 2 hours, but he wanted to study the training grounds while they were empty. He dressed quietly and slipped outside. The air was cold and thin. Jake walked around the combat areas and memorized every detail. He counted the obstacles, measured distances, and noted hiding spots that others might miss. This was old habit from his Marine training. Know the battlefield before the battle starts. When the alarm finally rang, hundreds of alien students poured into the training areas. Jake joined his assigned group and waited for instructions. The other students towered over him like trees over a small bush. Instructor Thylon appeared with a cart full of weapons. "Today we test weapon skills," she announced. "Each species will demonstrate their natural advantages with standard Galactic Defense Force equipment." She held up a plasma rifle. The weapon was twice the size of anything Jake had used on Earth. Its energy core glowed blue and hummed with power that could melt through steel. "Saurek students, you are first," Thylon commanded. Cadet Zorik picked up the plasma rifle. He was 8 feet tall with green scales and arms like tree trunks. The weapon looked small in his hands. He aimed at targets placed 300 yards away and fired. Each shot hit the center perfectly. His reptile eyes never blinked, and his steady hands never shook. "Excellent," Thylon said. "Heat resistance and natural stability make Saurek warriors, perfect for energy weapons." The Clixon students went next. These insect-like aliens had 4 arms and armor that grew from their bodies. They grabbed multiple weapons at once and fired at different targets. Their extra limbs let them reload while still shooting. The sound of their weapons was like thunder. Jake watched each species show off their natural gifts. The crystal-skinned Nexari absorbed energy from the weapons and fired it back even stronger. The multi-armed Zentari could operate 3 weapons at the same time. Each alien student was a living weapon designed for war. "Human student, your turn," Thylon called out. Jake stepped forward and picked up the plasma rifle. It was heavier than he expected, and the grip was made for larger hands. He had to adjust his stance to balance the weight properly. The alien students whispered among themselves. Some laughed quietly. Zorik spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look how he struggles with the weapon," the Saurek said. "His weak arms can barely hold it steady." Jake ignored the comments and focused on the targets. He fired 6 shots and hit 5 targets. Not perfect, but not terrible either. The weapon's recoil was stronger than Earth firearms, but he adapted quickly. "Adequate," Thylon said with disappointment in her voice. "Nothing special." Jake handed back the weapon and returned to his place in line. The other students looked at him like he had confirmed their suspicions. Humans were weak and ordinary. The next test was close combat using training weapons that delivered painful electric shocks instead of killing blows. Students had to fight one-on-one matches until someone surrendered or got knocked down. The Clixon students dominated this test. Their natural armor blocked most attacks, and their multiple arms let them strike from several angles at once. The Sarek used their powerful tails to sweep opponents off their feet. The Zentari overwhelmed enemies, with four-armed attacks that were impossible to block. Jake fought 3 matches and won 1. His victory came against a smaller Nexari student who relied too much on his crystal armor. Jake used speed and footwork to stay behind the alien until he could land a winning strike. Basic competence, Thylan noted. The human shows some skill but nothing that stands out. The final test of the day was tactical simulation. Students worked in teams to capture enemy positions using computer-controlled opponents. Most teams used the same approach they had learned in previous classes. Charge forward, use superior firepower, and overwhelm the enemy through direct assault. Jake was assigned to a team with Lyra, a Nexari warrior, and Grok, a Zentari soldier. Both aliens were twice his size and had natural advantages in combat. "We attack from the front," Lyra declared. "I will absorb their energy fire and send it back. Grok will provide covering fire with multiple weapons." "What about flanking?" Jake suggested. "If we circle around the side, we could avoid their strongest defenses." Grok's forearms waved dismissively. "Flanking is for cowards. Real warriors attack head-on." "But if we study their patrol patterns first," Jake continued, "we might find weak spots in their defense." "Enough," Lyra said. "We use proven tactics. Direct assault has worked for thousands of years." Jake watched other teams charge straight at the enemy positions. Most failed quickly. The computer-controlled defenders had superior weapons and better defensive positions. Team after team was eliminated in minutes. When their turn came, Jake tried one more time. "What if we wait for their shift change? Guards are always weakest during transitions." "There is no honor in waiting," Grok replied. "We attack now." They charged forward like every other team. Lyra absorbed some enemy fire but was quickly overwhelmed. Grok's multiple weapons provided good firepower, but he was too exposed. Jake used cover and movement to stay alive longer, but eventually their team was eliminated just like the others. Instructor Thylan reviewed the results with obvious satisfaction. As expected, the human adds nothing special to his team. Standard performance using established tactics. That evening, Jake sat in his room reviewing the day's events. The alien students were physically superior in every way. They had natural weapons, armor, and abilities that humans could never match. Their weapons were more advanced, and their tactics had been tested across the galaxy for millennia. But Jake noticed something the instructors had missed. Every alien species fought the same way. They relied on their natural advantages and used direct confrontation to solve every problem. They had become so used to winning through superior strength that they never learned to think differently. Jake opened his notebook and began writing. He had spent only 1 day at the academy, but he was already seeing patterns that might be useful later. The aliens were stronger, but they were also predictable. They fought like they had never faced an enemy who could not be beaten through. Raw power. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Jake was not worried. He had something the aliens did not understand yet. He had learned to fight like a human. The final examination day arrived after 6 weeks of training. Jake woke up before dawn as usual, but this time he felt different. Today would decide if he stayed at the academy or returned to Earth in failure. Commander Vextar gathered all students in the main hall. Behind him stood a door marked with warning signs in 12 different alien languages. Beyond that door lay the individual combat testing chamber. "The final examination tests each student alone," Vextar announced. "You will face a series of combat scenarios using any methods taught at this academy. Failure means immediate dismissal." Jake listened as Vextar explained the rules. Each student would enter the chamber and face increasingly difficult opponents. The test was designed to push every species to their limits. Most students failed before completing half the challenges. "The first opponent is a Mark 7 training robot," Vextar continued. "This machine has defeated every student who has attempted the examination in the past 2 years. It is programmed with all known galactic combat techniques and cannot be beaten using standard methods." Jake raised his hand. "What weapons are available inside the chamber?" "Standard academy equipment," Vextar replied. "Plasma rifles, energy shields, close combat weapons, and emergency supplies." The first student entered the testing chamber. Sounds of combat echoed through the walls. Energy weapons fired rapidly, followed by crashes and explosions. After 10 minutes, the student emerged injured and defeated. One by one, alien students entered the chamber. Each one was stronger, faster, and better armed than Jake. Each one failed against the Mark 7 robot. The machine was designed to counter every known fighting technique in the galaxy. Cadet Zorik, the massive Sauric warrior, lasted longer than most. His natural armor protected him from the robot's energy fire, and his strength let him wield heavy weapons. But even he emerged defeated after 15 minutes. The robot adapts to each fighting style, Thylon explained to the waiting students. It learns your weaknesses and exploits them. Direct confrontation always fails. Jake watched each student exit the chamber. Some were injured, all were frustrated. The robot seemed impossible to defeat using the combat methods taught at the academy. Human student, your turn, Vextar called out. Jake entered the testing chamber. The room was large and filled with obstacles, weapons racks, and training equipment. Emergency supplies sat in boxes around the edges. The Mark 7 robot waited in the center. The machine was 7 feet tall and covered in armor plating. Its arms ended in weapon mounts that could fire energy blasts or launch projectiles. Sensors covered its head, giving it perfect awareness of the entire room. "Begin combat," a voice announced. The robot immediately opened fire. Jake dove behind cover as energy blasts scorched the wall where he had been standing. He could hear the machine moving, searching for a clear shot. Jake did not return fire. Instead, he stayed hidden and watched the robot's movement patterns. For 5 minutes, he avoided combat entirely while studying his opponent. The instructors, watching through monitors, grew impatient. "Why is he not fighting?" Thylon asked. "The examination requires combat, not hiding." Jake finally moved, but not toward the weapons racks. He ran to the emergency supply boxes and began pulling out equipment. Rope, metal brackets, power cells, and repair tools. What is he doing? Vextar wondered. Jake used the rope and brackets to create a trap near the room's entrance. He connected power cells to create an electrical charge. The robot followed him, firing continuously. But Jake stayed one step ahead. Instead of fighting the robot directly, Jake began modifying the room itself. He moved obstacles to create new paths and hiding spots. He redirected the robot's weapon, fire, by using reflective surfaces. He turned the training chamber into a maze designed to confuse his opponent. The robot was programmed to counter known fighting techniques, but Jake was not using any known techniques. He treated the entire situation like a puzzle to be solved, rather than an enemy to be defeated. Jake climbed onto elevated platforms and dropped obstacles onto the robot. When that failed to stop it, he used the rope to trip the machine and send it crashing into walls. The robot's sensors were designed to track opponents, not environmental hazards. 20 minutes into the test, Jake found the robot's weakness. Its power cables were protected by armor, but the connections were exposed when the machine moved certain ways. Jake used his knife to cut through the cables while the robot was distracted by falling debris. The Mark 7 robot shut down. Jake had defeated the machine that no other student could beat. The testing chamber door opened. Jake emerged to find every instructor staring at him in silence. Vextar checked his monitoring equipment twice, unable to believe what he had recorded. "Explain your tactics," Commander Vextar demanded. Jake thought about how to answer. "I observed the robot's programming and found ways to work around it. The machine was designed to fight opponents using standard galactic combat methods. I used different methods." "What different methods?" Thylon asked. "You barely used any weapons." "I used everything in the room as a weapon," Jake replied. "The robot, the obstacles, the emergency supplies, even the room itself. I made the environment work for me instead of against me." The instructors looked confused. This was not how combat worked in their experience. Warriors fought with weapons and strength, not by turning rooms into traps. "Where did you learn such techniques?" Vextar asked. Jake paused before answering. This was the moment when everything would change. "These are basic human military tactics, sir. We call it asymmetric warfare. When you cannot win through strength, You change the rules of the fight. Change the rules, Thylin repeated. Yes, ma'am. On Earth, weaker armies often defeat stronger ones by refusing to fight the enemy's type of battle. We use the environment, create new weapons from available materials, and turn the opponent's strengths into weaknesses. Vextar studied the monitoring. Records again. You turned the robot's programming against itself. The robot was designed to be unbeatable using known methods, Jake explained. So I used unknown methods. In human warfare, we have a saying, if you find yourself in a fair fight, you did not plan properly. The instructors exchanged glances. They were beginning to understand that humans had developed something completely different from galactic warfare. While other species had evolved natural weapons and relied on direct confrontation, humans had learned to make any situation unfair in their favor. Complete the remaining challenges, Vextar ordered. Jake returned to the chamber and faced the next scenarios. Each one was designed to test different aspects of combat skill. Each one assumed the student would use conventional tactics. Jake defeated every challenge using methods that left the instructors speechless. He won battles by avoiding them, turned enemies against each other, and found solutions that the test designers had never considered. When he finally emerged from the chamber, Jake had completed the entire examination in record time. He was the first student in Academy history to defeat every challenge in the final test. The silence in the room was complete. Every instructor realized they had witnessed something that would change galactic warfare forever. The Academy's senior staff gathered in an emergency meeting that night. Jake sat in the center of the room while 12 alien instructors stared at him like he was a puzzle they could not solve. Commander Vexitar placed the examination recordings on the table. Lieutenant Morrison, you have achieved something unprecedented. No student has ever defeated the Mark 7 robot. You completed challenges that were designed to be impossible. Thank you, sir, Jake replied. This is not praise, Instructor Thylin interrupted. This is confusion. Your methods violate every principle of honorable combat. You avoided direct confrontation, used tricks and deception, and turned simple battles into complex schemes. Jake remained calm. I used the tools available to complete the mission. Tools? Another instructor asked. You used rope and power, cables as weapons. You made the robot fight itself. These are not tools of war. Vextar leaned forward. Explain to us how a species with no natural weapons, no armor, and primitive technology developed such advanced combat methods. Jake had prepared for this question. The answer would either change everything or get him expelled from the Academy. Humans have been at war for our entire history, Jake began. Not just wars between nations, but constant conflict everywhere, on our planet. Desert wars, jungle wars, mountain wars, city wars. We fought in every environment against every type of enemy. The instructors listened without interrupting. Other species evolved natural advantages, Jake continued. Claws, armor, strength, speed. Humans evolved something different. We learned to adapt to any situation and turn disadvantages into advantages. Give examples, Thylin demanded. Jake thought about Earth's military history. In ancient times, small human armies defeated larger ones by choosing where to fight. We used terrain, weather, and timing as weapons. We fought at night when enemies expected daylight battles. We attacked during storms when others sought shelter. Primitive tactics, one instructor dismissed. Modern warfare uses the same principles, Jake replied. When stronger enemies had better weapons, humans developed guerrilla tactics. We hid in forests and mountains, struck supply lines instead of armies, and made occupation impossible through constant harassment. Vextar studied the examination recordings again. You treated the robot like an occupying army. Yes, sir. The robot was stronger and better armed, so I refused to fight its type of battle. I made it fight my type of battle instead. The room fell silent. The alien instructors were beginning to understand something disturbing. While their species had evolved natural weapons and relied on strength, humans had evolved the ability to make any fight unfair in their favor. What other human military concepts exist? Vexitar asked. Jake opened his notebook. Psychological warfare, where you defeat enemies by making them afraid or confused. Economic warfare, where you destroy their ability to supply their armies. Information warfare, where you control what enemies know and believe. You fight without fighting, Thailand said slowly. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to make the enemy give up before it starts. Jake agreed. Humans learned that strength is not the only path to victory. Commander Vextar made a decision that would change galactic warfare forever. The Academy's curriculum will be restructured immediately. Lieutenant Morrison, you are hereby appointed as the first human instructor at the Zentari Military Academy. Sir? Jake was surprised. You will teach alien warriors how to think like humans in combat situations. Our current methods are limited to direct confrontation. Your species has developed tactical concepts that we never considered, Instructor Thailand objected. Commander, these human methods are dishonorable. They rely on deception and trickery. They are effective, Vextar replied. Honor matters less than victory when facing extinction. Jake stood up. Sir, with respect, I think you misunderstand human warfare. It is not about trickery. It is about using intelligence instead of relying only on strength. Explain the difference, Vexitar requested. Jake chose his words carefully. Galactic warfare assumes that the strongest side wins. Human warfare assumes that the smartest side wins. We study our enemies, find their weaknesses, and create strategies that turn their advantages against them. Like you did with the robot, Thailand realized. The robot was programmed to be unbeatable using known methods, Jake explained. So I used unknown methods. This is how humans approach every problem. When the obvious solution fails, we find solutions that others have not considered. Over the following days, Jake began developing a new curriculum for the Academy. He taught alien students about Sun Tzu's art of war, explaining how ancient human wisdom applied to modern galactic conflicts. He demonstrated guerrilla tactics, showing how small forces could defeat larger ones through superior strategy. The alien students struggled with human concepts at first. They were used to solving problems through strength and direct action. Learning to think strategically and tactically required them to change their entire approach to warfare. But the results were remarkable. Students who had failed traditional combat training began excelling when they learned human methods. They discovered that intelligence and creativity could overcome physical disadvantages. Word of the Academy's new curriculum spread throughout the Galactic Defense Coalition. Other military schools requested human instructors. Generals who had relied on superior firepower for centuries began studying Earth's military history. Jake found himself addressing a gathering of the galaxy's highest-ranking military officers. He stood before beings who commanded fleets of starships and armies of millions. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy, Jake told them. We are not the fastest, the most armored, or the best armed. But we may be the most dangerous because we learned something that strength alone cannot teach. What did humans learn? Asked a general whose species had conquered 12 star systems. Jake smiled. We learned that there is no such thing as a fair fight. Every battle can be won if you refuse to fight the enemy's type of war. Every opponent has weaknesses that can be exploited. Every disadvantage can be turned into an advantage. The assembled officers realized they were witnessing the birth of a new era in galactic warfare. Human tactical doctrine would revolutionize how wars were fought throughout the galaxy. The most dangerous enemy, Jake concluded, is not the one with the biggest weapons or the strongest armor. The most dangerous enemy is the one who thinks differently than you expect. Jake looked out at the alien officers and saw the future of galactic warfare. Soon every military in the galaxy would fight like humans. They would use intelligence over strength, strategy over force, and creativity over convention. Earth had sent him to learn from the aliens, but instead, Jake had taught them something far more valuable. He had shown them that the greatest weapon in any war was not technology or natural advantages. The greatest weapon was the human mind. Week 2 began with advanced combat training. Jake woke up early again and walked the academy grounds. He had been doing this every morning, mapping every building, every path, and every piece of equipment. The alien students slept until the alarm rang, but Jake used the quiet hours to learn. Commander Vextar gathered all students in the main training hall. Behind him stood a massive structure that looked like a fortress made of black metal. Guard towers rose from each corner, and weapon turrets moved slowly back and forth. "This is live fire training," Vextar announced. "You will work in teams of 3 to capture the fortress. The weapons fire training rounds that hurt but do not kill. Medical teams stand ready for injuries." Jake looked at the fortress and counted the defenses. 12 guard towers, 8 weapon turrets, and patrol routes that covered every approach. The structure was designed to stop direct attacks. "Team assignments are posted," Vextar continued. "You have 1 hour to plan your assault. Teams that fail will repeat the exercise until they succeed or request to leave the academy." Jake found his name on the assignment list. His teammates were Lyra, the crystal-skinned Nexari warrior, and Grok, the 4-armed Zentari soldier. The same aliens who had insisted on direct attacks during the previous week. Other teams gathered around tables to plan their assaults. Jake listened to their discussions. Every team planned the same type of attack. Charge forward, use superior firepower, and overwhelm the defenses through brute force. "We attack the front gate," Lyra declared. "I will absorb their energy fire and reflect it back. Grok will provide covering fire with multiple weapons. The front gate has the strongest defenses," Jake pointed out. "Maybe we should look for another way in." Grok's forearms crossed over his chest. "Other ways are for cowards. Warriors attack where the enemy expects them." Jake pulled out his notebook and showed them sketches he had made. "I watched the fortress for an hour this morning. The patrol patterns have gaps. The guard towers have blind spots. We could use those weaknesses." "Blind spots are tricks," Lyra said. "Real warriors do not need tricks." Jake tried a different approach. "What if we wait and watch the first few teams attack? We could learn from their mistakes." "Learning from failure is shameful," Grok replied. "We succeed through strength, not watching others fail." The planning hour ended. Jake's team prepared for their assault along with 5 other teams. The first team consisted of 3 Sarek warriors who moved like green tanks across the training ground. Jake watched them charge the front gate. The fortress defenses opened fire immediately. Energy blasts lit up the sky like fireworks. The Sarek team used their natural armor and heat resistance to push forward, but the crossfire was too intense. Within minutes, all 3 were down. The Bay second team tried the same approach. 3 Klixen soldiers with their insect armor and multiple arms. They lasted longer than the Sarek but eventually fell to the concentrated defensive fire. Team after team charged the front gate. Each one failed in the same way. The fortress defenses were too strong for direct assault. "Our turn," Lyra announced. Jake made one final attempt. "Every team that attacked the front gate failed. We need a different plan." "We are stronger than the other teams," Grok insisted. "We will succeed where they failed." They moved toward the fortress. Jake had no choice but to follow his teammates. As they approached the front gate, he noticed something the other teams had missed. The guard towers focused their fire on the strongest-looking attackers first. They had targeted the largest Sarek warriors and the most armored Klixen soldiers. The fortress defenses opened fire. Energy blasts struck the ground around them. Lyra began absorbing the energy and sending it back toward the towers. Grok fired with all 4 arms at different targets. Jake moved differently than his teammates. Instead of charging straight forward, he used every piece of cover available. He rolled behind debris, crawled under obstacles, and moved when the tower. Guns were focused elsewhere. The defensive fire concentrated on Lyra and Grok, just as Jake had predicted. While his teammates drew attention, Jake worked his way around the side of the fortress. He found a maintenance door that the other teams had ignored. The door was locked, but Jake had studied the fortress construction. He used his knife to remove the door's power coupling. The lock clicked open. Jake slipped inside and found himself in a corridor filled with control panels. He had expected this. Every fortress needed internal systems to operate the defenses. He began shutting down guard towers one by one. Outside, Lyra and Grok noticed the defensive fire decreasing. "The towers are failing," Lyra called out. "Push, forward." Jake disabled the front gate locks and opened the main entrance. His teammates rushed inside, confused about how the fortress defenses had suddenly stopped working. "How did you do that?" Grok asked. "I found a maintenance entrance," Jake explained. The fortress was designed to stop frontal attacks, but the builders forgot to protect the service areas. They completed their objective and captured the fortress. Jake's team was the first to succeed, while other teams continued failing at the front gate. Instructor Thylin examined the fortress systems. The defense grid was disabled from inside, she reported to Commander Vextar. Someone accessed the maintenance level. Vextar looked at Jake's team. "Which one of you entered through the service door?" "I did," Jake admitted. "Why did you not attack with your teammates?" Jake chose his words carefully. "I looked for the weakest point in the defenses. The maintenance door was unguarded." The instructors exchanged glances. This was not how galactic warfare was supposed to work. Direct assault was the proven method. Sneaking through service doors was not honorable combat. "Unusual tactics," Vextar finally said. But the objective was completed. Over the following days, Jake's team faced more complex fortress scenarios. Each time, Jake found ways to avoid direct confrontation. He disabled power systems, created diversions, and exploited weaknesses that other teams ignored. His success rate began attracting attention. Other students whispered about the human who won battles without fighting. Some called his methods cowardly. Others wondered if there was something they could learn. Jake kept detailed notes about each exercise. He was beginning to understand something important about galactic warfare. The aliens had become so used to winning through superior strength that they had forgotten other ways to fight. But Jake remembered lessons from Earth's history. Sometimes the weakest army won by refusing to fight the enemy's type of battle. Sometimes victory came from thinking differently than everyone else expected. The instructors noticed Jake's unusual methods but did not know what to make of them. They had never seen tactics like these before. In their experience, warfare was about strength, courage, and direct confrontation. Jake was showing them something new, but they were not ready to understand it yet.